Kevin Millard is a human, a father, a husband, a photographer, and an Enneagram 4. Kevin joins us to talk about how an Enneagram 4 can survive in the real world. Don't worry, we'll explain what an Enneagram and 4 mean. Today's episode is a recording that will serve as episode 39 of the Wax Museum and the debut episode of his podcast, A Philosophy of Hope. I'm Livwat, and you're listening to the Wax Museum, conversations that need to be had.
All right, thank you for joining us today. I'm so happy to have my friend Livwat in fresh from Canada. Nice and chilly up there right now, I can only imagine.
It's pretty chilly.
But you have to give me Fahrenheit numbers.
See, I don't do Fahrenheit, and I'm kind of insistent on that because I want to be kind of like an ignorant Canadian that doesn't understand American culture.
Yeah, it works this way.
No, really?
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's
anyway, I'm happy to,
I was going to say it's like minus 14, I think. So I don't know what that means in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I don't either, but I'm used to 60 degrees Fahrenheit on like a cool day, so maybe if it gets down to freezing and we have any snow whatsoever, like half an inch, I mean, they shut down the schools where I live because we don't have the plows. Of course, you wouldn't use a plow with an inch of snow, but we're just not prepared for snow at all.
And nobody knows how to drive in the wintertime. That's, the same thing happened. We had a snowstorm in Toronto once, which is like way east of where I live, right? Like I live in Calgary, which is western, and Toronto had like a snowstorm and they called in the army, and all us Albertans were just laughing at them. It's like, come on.
Yeah, calling the army. Yeah, I love it. Anyway, glad to have you with me. I met you, just to give the listeners an idea, I met you online in a Facebook group for the Liturgist podcast, which is an excellent. My wife actually turned me onto that, and she listens to it way more than I do. But I do like their, community on there. So I met you on there, and I was on your other podcast earlier this year. And remind me the name because my brain just blanked.
The Wax Museum.
The Wax Museum. That's right. But I really feel like I need to be on your ADD mastermind.
We could make that happen for sure. It's so much fun. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it, but it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm at the age where I've been told I'm ADD my whole life, and then I'm just kind of point like whatever. Okay, I'll accept it. But I am who I am. Take it or leave it. So.
Well, and I've said before, there's been times where you and I have talked, and I'm like, this is scary, like how similar our brains work. So I think we could diagnose each other as ADD.
Amen, brother. So recently we were talking over messages or something about capitalism, and so I think we're going to save that for your show.
Okay,
for another one. Today we're mainly talking about an Enneagram 4 survival guide. For all you Enneagram 4s out there who are looking for a way to survive, we are going to solve all the world's problems in a matter of minutes.
Because that's what 4s do.
Maybe we're not going to solve them. We're going to feel them very deeply and and be overwhelmed with them.
We'll paint a beautiful picture of them.
Yes, exactly. I, I was recently, I went, speaking of ADD and Enneagram 4, um, I recently went to my parents' house and I had to go to the restroom and
Uh-huh.
I went to the back restroom, which is also their bedroom and it's hardly ever used. It's like a half bath. And like all men, I'm peeing in the toilet and I'm looking straight ahead where they usually put like advertisements if I was in a restaurant. And I noticed a cabinet of old cologne that he has, and I took a picture of it right away. And because I noticed myself drifting, as soon as I saw that cologne, my brain started drifting. And it was drifting, thinking about who's had that cologne since I was a child. So my dad, who's a working man, doesn't get dressed up that often. So I guess a bottle of cologne can last him a long time. But not only did I see the cologne, I started thinking about all the thoughts of where the cologne used to be in the house. I thought about the feeling when I saw the cologne. I thought, I mean, it just all of it hit me at once. And so it was like, and then I caught myself, and it was the perfect example of Kevin. Not only are you ADD, but you are such an Enneagram 4 because every number on the Enneagram would have dealt with that situation completely differently. But that's a very bizarre example, and I would love to dive into that. But before I get too far into the Enneagram, I don't want to lose anybody thinking that we're in a cult. I wanted to mention that you can learn about the Enneagram a number of ways. There's a website called the EnneagramInstitute.com. They have some great resources. Or I really, really enjoy a woman by the name of Suzanne Stabile. There's another guy named Ian Morgan Cron, and he has a great podcast named Typology, which I really enjoyed listening to.
Right.
And Suzanne Stabile has one named I just lost it. I'm gonna have to find it in my thing here. The Enneagram Journey. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the Enneagram, just in layman's terms, is practically a personality test.
Right.
In ways. A lot of people kind of put in the same category as like the Myers-Briggs test. But the Enneagram is different because it's kind of an ancient tool used for probably maybe 1,000 years. I mean, it's old, and it gained popularity in the 70s, and it's been becoming more and more popular as of late. And the great thing about the Enneagram is that it helps people relate to themselves and relate to others in a way that's transformative. So it doesn't put you in a box. It tells you the box that you're already in. So
right.
That so that and that doesn't explain it fully. But you have 9 numbers on the Enneagram, and each number it shows a different motivation that a person would have.
I think that's the key right there, is that it tells you what your motivation is, and it'll tell you the motivation of others, which is so key to relationships.
Yes. Yeah, because my wife is 6, which is I almost said the worrier, but that's a really bad way of putting it. The loyalist. But she does have a tendency to worry or to think about, things that could happen in a situation. And we need those people in our lives. So I just thought, I say, Lauren, you just need to chill. But no, I see through the lens of the Enneagram, 1, I see that she's not alone. And 2, I see kind of where she's coming from when she's in that state of, wait, hesitate, let's think this through before we proceed. So it's been really good for our marriage.
That's good.
Have you and your wife talked about it much?
She hasn't done the test, so not really sure what she is. So,
yeah.
but it's been something for sure, like for me, just understanding my inner motivation and why I'm so like fascinated by sad stuff is pretty awesome.
I'm telling you, when it's one of those things where in life you learn a label and you say, wait, I'm not choosing this label. It's like I've been the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like I am just coming to it. I'm just realizing that this is what you call what I already know in my heart to be true.
Well, exactly. And so there's just, and I think, it's not everybody understands that. And I've come to terms with that not everyone's going to understand why I like sad stuff and I like deep stuff and why I am so complicated, and it's like, and there's just people that are going to be like, well, that's John. He's just weird. See, I just used my name, John, there.
Yeah.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. That's going to be a hard one to break, John.
I know.
Yeah, no, it definitely tells you that you're not alone and you're not crazy. I mean, I laugh when someone says you're crazy, you're weird, whatever. But I'm a little sensitive. So I want to know, why are you saying that? And what is it about me that you don't understand that I need to explain or help you understand? So you realize I'm not really that crazy, And
do you find you can explain?
No. No, not really.
I kind of take pride in the fact that I can't explain. I'm like, no, it's okay. You know what? That's...
Yeah.
And I deliberately used John there because I'm talking about in my personal life. Bridge is kind of my online persona, my music. I'm working on some music, and I've switched over kind of my persona for music and for podcasting, and it's kind of cool to separate the two, so I could say this is John and this is Bridge.
Do you worry about John because that's like your public or professional persona, or?
No, I don't really feel like Bridge is doing anything that would embarrass John. So I'm not so much worried about that. But my vision for Bridge is that I do want to build bridges between, the sacred and the secular, the left and the right. Anyways. There's a whole spiel there, but I can't remember it. I did it on another podcast, and it was brilliant, but I don't know.
We need to talk. Okay, that's another episode to put down in the notes. This week, I had the conversation. I'm done building bridges.
You're done building bridges?
I'm done building bridges. I am so tired of building bridges.
You're just going to burn them all down now?
Yeah. I'll burn it all down, brother. I
understand.
I realize how much how anxiety-inducing it is trying to explain yourself in order, to kind of go back on what I just said a while ago. But just how much anxiety comes along with trying to explain myself, or trying to prove myself, or trying to defend myself.
Yeah, see, I don't like doing any of that.
It just takes, But
anyway. I don't know. It's almost like just starting a bridge and being like, hey, have you thought of this? Yeah, I'm going to leave now.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just say I'm like a shoot disturber, right? I don't know if you swear on your podcast. I try not to on mine. But like, you could say that I'm a troll, but I'm like a gentle troll.
Mm-hmm.
Which means I get away with saying a lot of things.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so back to the Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
The Enneagram 4 is the feeler. They have an intense personality. They are the individualist. They are themselves. They are the artists. People usually like to paint them with a broad brush and say they're dressed in goth, which I've never done. And I don't even think I'm that.
I have much respect for goth, though. Yeah, I used to actually teach back in the day in another life, and I remember there was one of the students came in, and she was dressed all in black, and she had the black lipstick and the black nails and stuff. And I looked at her, I'm like, "So you're goth today?" And I'm like, "If you're goth today, you're not allowed to smile, like, at all." And she cracked a smile. I may have ruined her whole thing. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand goth that much. But
well, when I was, I don't know how old you are. It doesn't really matter. But when I was in high school, Maryland, everything was Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but they were the nicest peers. You know. So they, but anyway. So the Enneagram 4 tends to be very passionate, tends to be very intense, artistic, the individualist. Suzanne Stabile says they're not necessarily sad, they're just melancholy, and they're okay with the melancholy.
Melancholy is the joy of being sad.
The joy of being sad, yes. So do you resonate with that?
I do resonate with that. I actually, and I'll spend a lot of time trying to understand another person's pain. And so if I can read like a news story and understand the pain of the person who's the victim in that situation, it feels like I believe I need to feel it so that I can do something about it. Like it's like I want to sit in that pain because something good's going to come from me actually understanding that pain.
Yeah, yes, and would you agree that you feel like other people don't feel enough?
Yeah, definitely.
Like in your mind, if more people were in touch with their feelings or felt the intensity that you feel at times, you feel like the world would be a better place.
Absolutely, and I think that's what the bridges are about. I'm like, somehow I want to bridge that and kind of help these people understand the other side of the issue a little bit. And feel a little bit of that, what those people are feeling, so that hopefully they'll stop being jerks to them. You know.
Bro, you're speaking my language, and we kind of touched on that in the episode we did for your podcast regarding empathy.
Yeah. Yep.
And and I still continue to be baffled, growing up in the Christian church the way I did. And hearing the things and learning the things I learned, and then becoming an adult and feeling like people that I thought understood empathy don't seem to understand empathy. I'm not trying to judge, I'm just trying to be honest, because like if I see something that affects me, I assume that it's going to affect someone else that I assume has the same values that I do, that I have. And when I don't see that, it bothers me. For instance, this week I shared a post about it was a picture of Bethel worship leaders along with a lot of other worship leaders. Yes. It was probably 70 white people and one black dude.
Yeah.
Had all gone to the White House and they had this picture beside the president.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I shared that on my page, and there were a few memes made out of it. One was, "This is why I don't." It was Science Mike said, "This is why I no longer identify as a white evangelical."
Yeah.
The post I shared actually put a verse from Isaiah together with a photo, and I think it was really triggering because the responses I got, it was like, I think people saw it and they didn't like the dissonance of like, of the whole situation, and so. I think my favorite response was from a guy that used to go to the same church I went to. Said, we don't need to judge, we just need to pray. And I was like, this doesn't. How do you reconcile the message of Trump with the message of Jesus? And it's just so odd to me. Like I see a situation like that, it elicits feelings within me, and it's not about Trump versus Hillary, Trump versus Obama, Trump versus what's the alternative? It's just, let's just talk about the situation and talk about what it looks like. Does that not elicit any response from you? And that's where I get so confused.
I've been thinking a lot about this, because I'm thinking about where I came from. And, like I used to be very much like that fundamentalist Christian that wanted to see like Jesus on the main stage, you know?
Mhm.
Like I remember there was a politician from Canada who came to a church. He was running for the conservative leadership, or I think he was leading the Conservative Party at that time. It had a different name, which is all complicated. But he came to this church, and it was like a Pentecostal, charismatic church. And he came and he spoke, and I was convinced, man, this guy is going to do God's will in our
Yeah.
government. And I was so pumped about it. And I remember, like maybe a couple of years after that, Mel Gibson came out with Passion of the Christ, and I'm like, yeah, Mel Gibson represents us. And then and then he gets arrested and goes on this anti-Jew tirade and calls the police officer sugar. Yeah. But there's all of that, and I don't know, like ever since then I'm like, dang, I got burnt, and my view really shifted, but it was like this idea that somehow having someone in power represent my belief made it more legit. And I remember feeling that back then, and I know now that looks so stupid, and I don't understand why people hold to that idea, even though I used to hold that idea. It's like so bizarre because it's so counter Jesus to say we want power.
Yeah, but that's the Christianity that you grew up with, is a powerful Christianity. And it makes you feel validated. And that's what I see in these comments and in this discussion. That's what I see in Trumpism. I was looking at a post recently, and they were showing different logos from the presidential campaigns. And they got all these different ones, and she said this makes a person look modern, and this one makes a person look sophisticated, etc. And they got to Trump's, and she says this one has no design and no fluff, and it's speaking the language of the people that want, that he wants to reach. And he, and even before he got elected, all my friends said, oh, there's no way. And I said, there is a way, because all the polls that are being taken, the pollsters call at night around, let's say 6:30 or 5:30, 6:30, whenever people are usually at the dinner table. And I said, think about all the people that either don't have a landline or don't have a cell phone that works, or are working overtime, maybe as like a maid at the hotel, and they don't even have time for the polls or can't get to the polls. And and you just forget about that. You forget about the people about that section. And he spoke to a lot of the working class vote. And there you go. The rest is history.
Oh, totally. Totally.
But when you speak someone's language and you make them feel like they're heard, whether you really are listening to them or not, when you validate their concerns and say, I'm not like the rest, I'm a new voice in Washington, look at me, then we all want to just feel validated. Don't you feel that way?
Yeah, it's crazy though, because I'm just like, I don't remember feeling like the victim, because that's what I sense from evangelicals right now, is they're like, oh man, like the whole world is crapping on us, and Trump is the only one that's gonna defend us. And it's like, I can't believe it. And I guess maybe the shift for me out of that more, kind of conservative mindset was when I started reading Relevant magazine, and they were talking a lot about social justice and all this stuff. It was me realizing, man, no, those are the people that are suffering, not me.
Yeah.
Right? And learning that. And so, and it's kind of interesting because I became a lot more social justice minded, but I still kind of understand where people are like, well, is all of this true? Like when you consider intersectionality and like just all of the things that, can happen to you. You can be of a certain color, a certain sexuality, a certain, gender, or, there's all of that. And if that's combined, then you're the most oppressed. And I'm like, okay, I'm not convinced it's quite as systematic as everybody's trying to make it. And I think that's what the conservatives are trying to poke holes in, because you have that person that couldn't get home in time to do the polling, and you're telling that person they have privilege, right?
Yeah.
And so there is something kind of, but I mean, I think this may be a trait of Enneagram 4 too, is I'm okay with holding things in tension. I'm okay with cognitive dissonance and saying, wow, that right there is complicated. I don't need a clear answer on something. And so I'm able to hold a lot of ideas at once. And it hurts, but I like that it hurts. I don't know if this sounds really messed up, but you know what I mean?
You are, classic number 4. You are addicted to your suffering at times.
Yeah, but I always feel like the suffering has purpose, right? Like I'm holding these different ideas, and it's hard to hold these different ideas, but I'm like, I wouldn't have it any other way. The easy way out is just to say, well, I'm a liberal, or, well, I'm a conservative. But I know the right thing is for me to say, they both have a point, and they're both bat poop crazy. Like there's...
Yeah. There's a tension there, and there should be a tension there, because that means there's something working. I mean, I had a friend tell me once that a tent like you go camping with, it stays up because there's tension with all the poles.
I like that.
You have to find the tension. So anyway, there are 9 types of the Enneagram. Speaking of how we handle conflict, how we handle our feelings, or how we handle, what was it we were just saying? A situation that maybe would elicit strong feelings, or a situation that shows privilege, or what have you.
Sure.
So number 1 is a perfectionist. They tend to be the rule follower. So I tend to think, and they're also their own worst critic. I tend to think that their response to maybe social justice work might be, well, if the person obeyed the rules, because I hear that one all the time.
Yeah. If they just followed the rules, yeah.
Yeah, if they were to just follow the rules, and I don't really think that mindset's looking for, well, they did obey the rules or they couldn't obey the rules. They're not really looking for excuses. They're more thinking, did they obey the rules or not? And if they didn't obey the rules, they're suffering the consequences.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the helper or the advisor, and I think they would probably look at that in terms of how can I help. That's probably a lot of your social justice. Number 2.
Yeah.
This is fun actually. Number 3 is the achiever, or the number 3 is song and dance. The performer. They're going to let Not only do they see the need in social justice, but they're going to be the ones that get the work done. That's a fun one. But number 4, we're just going to feel it, and we're going to be passionate about it. Number 5 is the thinker, the investigator. Yeah. And I think we all know people, and they're probably going to think about it a lot. And my wife's cousin, who's actually become a good friend of mine, is an engineer, and he doesn't know the Enneagram, but I'm pretty sure he's a 5. He will study a thing to death. Right. He recently into like speakers and vintage audio, and I'm like, oh, that's an old stereo receiver. That'll probably be fine for what I want. He's like, oh no. That one doesn't have copper wiring. He just and that one doesn't have phono out.
I want it to be a 5 so bad. But you know what? My problem is I don't stick to a topic long enough to be an expert on it. I just move on to the next thing. So I kind of missed that boat.
Yeah. ADD mastermind. But I tell you what, a good 5 in your life as a number 4, a good 5 in your life is like life saving.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A 3, not so much, because I kind of see a 3 as like inauthentic at times, even though I can definitely
And I think that's a tough thing for me, is like I will see a 3 and I'll just be like, that person is so shallow. But I'm pretty sure my wing is 3 though, which is crazy, right?
And my wife told me that the other day because she sent me this description. Like, that sounds a lot like you. And I'm like, no.
So I'm like a deep performer though, right? So I'm kind of okay with that. It's just funny because I've shifted so much in the way I see myself. I don't know if I told you before, one of my favorite books I've ever read is David Brooks' what's it called? The Road to Character. And he talked a lot about how people in the old days, in the 1950s, they did like a poll and asked these like teenage kids if they're an important person. And it was something like 3 out of 10 said, yes, I'm an important person. They redid that poll like in the 80s or 90s, and 7 out of 10 said they're an important person. And just this idea of how there's been such a generational shift because of, the self-esteem movement, where people have become like, they have this inflated sense of importance.
Yeah.
And for
Everybody,
everybody, sorry?
Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah. And so I've really moved away from that over the last couple years, and it's funny that I've become a lot more public at the same time. I've been getting more attention as I've kind of coiled back and thought I'm not a big deal, but I think that, and I think I was planning on getting into this later, but like that's why I think like pulling back and not making what you do such a core part to who you are is the key for a 4 to survive. I think
it's.
Sorry?
I think it's freeing because no longer are you attached to what you do.
Yeah, and I need that desperately.
Yeah.
And so I will take periods where I just disappear. And I'm happy to come back and nobody says, "Where were you, Bridge? I missed you so much." Right? But it's like I wasn't Bridge, I was John. Every Sunday I am off social media completely. I'm not making music, I'm not making podcasts, I'm not editing podcasts. I'm John. 6 days a week, I'm Bridge. And it's almost like I see it kind of like a Superman, Clark Kent kind of scenario. And it's like what my family needs is Clark Kent. What the world needs is Superman. I don't know if that's super, but that's my perception of myself sometimes, right? And I need to be reminded once a week that I am Clark Kent. That's who I really am.
Yeah. You're kind of hitting on something important, which I think is having rules for yourself. And I hate that word rules; it's too triggering. But having guidelines.
Yeah.
Or parameters. Maybe that's a better word.
A rhythm.
A rhythm. Yeah. Amen.
That's a Rob Bell word right there.
Yeah.
Rob Bell was a huge inspiration to me for Sabbath. It totally rocked my world. Of what Sabbath looks like, because it's like what, kind of the classic sense is like, oh, well, that's the Sabbath is the day that I wear my church clothes and I try to think about God all day, right? But like kind of what Rob Bell says is like there were, when Moses introduced Sabbath, he introduced it to the children of Israel who were slaves, and they spent every day making bricks. And what made a Israelite worth anything was how many bricks they produced every day. And so he said, 1 day a week, stop making bricks. So 1 day a week, stop doing that thing that is core to your identity. What's core to my identity is I've got all these cool ideas and I got all these cool thoughts and I like to share them. And so, I use I find these ideas through my emotional pursuits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be able to like, oh, okay, this is my theory about this, and I'll bring it out there and I'll put it out there, and I may or may not get a response. But it's like, but that once a week, I'm not doing that. And he said, like, every person in our modern society carries a brick with them. Your cell phone, it's the brick. And I was like, wow. And so what he does for Sabbath is he puts his phone down for 24 hours and doesn't touch it.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Like,
yeah. It's amazing how much it's become part of our identity.
Yeah.
And we call it a phone, but it's really not even a phone. Yeah.
No. It's rarely a phone.
Yeah. I really feel like it's part of our consciousness. I mean, it's only a matter of time, they say, before you're gonna put your brain on there. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but I sound like a grandpa right now. But
that's crazy though. Like to think that, like, it's like this idea. I can't remember. There was a Johnny Depp movie where he like uploaded his consciousness to a computer, and then when he died, he could still exist. I'm like, don't you at one point want to just stop existing? Like, I don't know. Maybe that sounds really messed up, but I'm like, aren't you kind of tired of existing at some point?
That's why I love existentialism. I think Christianity needs a good taste of existentialism because it reminds us that we don't have forever. What matters is right now. What matters is right now. Well, no matter what.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's interesting to me because I still, at some level, believe in an afterlife, but I'm not really like counting on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna live life to its fullest, and either there's just like nothing afterwards, and I get to rest in peace, or I get an afterlife with Jesus, and it'll be awesome. But it's like I'm good with whatever. Like.
Yeah. I know hell was like a real easy one to let go of. Like you don't want to believe in it, even if you could prove it, But heaven is tough because it brings us a lot of comfort. I don't think Rob Bell's going to tackle that one.
He's not going to take heaven away.
No, I don't. Well, maybe he will, or maybe he'll. I could see him talking about heaven on earth, bring God's kingdom here, these kind of things. But yeah, heaven. Yeah. But man, we've got to do the capitalism podcast.
It's funny because I've had a guy on the podcast that is like pure capitalism, like pro-capitalism. Like I don't know if you saw my Facebook post where I said unpopular opinion and then I just said something completely ridiculous. And then I commented below and said I didn't say it was my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think I said like Justin Trudeau is the best prime minister we've ever had. Yeah. Right? And then, somebody's like, what? I'm like, I didn't say it's my opinion. I'm not saying I hate Justin Trudeau, but I mean, clearly he's not our best.
Yeah.
But so then I did the same thing with capitalism on Twitter. And I said, like, billionaires deserve to exist because they've worked for every penny they have. And you could be one too if you worked hard enough.
Yeah.
And somebody replied and said, that's true. Yeah, it was that guy I had on the podcast. I'm like, seriously? Like, there's just zero chance that a billionaire would ever be shady because the market would not allow that to happen. But anyways, that's another podcast episode, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah. But the poor in me has got to go a little dark for a second and just say that when I went to Germany 10 years ago, we toured one of the concentration camps. It wasn't Dachau, or it was Dachau, or it was the one that was made, that Dachau was formed after. But there was a sign as you walk in German, and it said, work makes you free. I was just like, wow. And so there is that idea in our culture that work makes you free. And there's so much to talk about that. And it's not that I have the answer.
No.
It's not about finding the answer.
No, it's not.
It's about just discussing. And it's so funny that, oh gosh, I'm gonna get way off. Well, I'll just say it real quick. The other day, I went to a craft store and I had a coupon on my phone, and she said, "Oh, you can't use that until 3 p.m. It starts at 3 p.m. It says it right there on the coupon." And I said, "Well, can I just come back at 3 and like return all this stuff and rebuy it?" She's like, "You can if you want, but I don't know how busy it is." And I just thought it was a funny altercation, so I put it on my Facebook, and a couple of my friends kind of roughed me up, like, people like you are the problem with retail. And I just thought it was so funny how quick people were coming to defend capitalism. Yeah. And I didn't care, but I'm thinking, like, do you think that store, it's like a big chain. I'm thinking, do you really think that store cares about my well-being? Do you really think that store cares about my pocketbook? They
don't.
They don't.
They clearly do not. And this is yet another topic that I want to touch on at some point, but I'm like, okay, isn't it interesting? I used to think this about evolution, and I was like, it's interesting to me how a guy in the 1800s started saying, hey, this animal looks kind of like that animal. Hey, maybe they're related. And ever since then, it's almost like people thought he was a prophet, and they've been building all these scientific theories around what he said, right? And I was like, well, that's crazy, right? But then I was like thinking, okay, the Americans and their Constitution. It's like, these forefathers, they were prophets, and we got to stick to what they said, right? And I'm like, Adam freaking Smith. Everything he said, it must be true. We've got to prove it because he was a prophet, right? And I'm like, it's like our forefathers were all prophets. And I'm like, what is that? Like, that they could have been wrong about a few things, right?
Yeah. Or maybe you're right about 98 and wrong about 2 of them. I mean, let's just throw that out there.
Okay, I guess I got to say, and to bring it back to being an Enneagram 4, I just feel like because of this kind of creative, unique kind of energy, I just get so bored of conventional thinking. And I'm like, you are all sheep.
I get bored with everything. I don't want that to sound like prideful or weird, but there are many days that like I was working out pretty regularly a couple years ago and last year, and it's really good for me, but it's kind of bad for me at the same time because I would push myself to the edge, and I love going to the edge. There's a quote that says, "Go to the edge. That's where you'll find the truth." And so, like, physically, I was pushing myself to the edge, but mentally, I was also. And it's like, take me there, baby. Like, I love going to the edge and looking over the edge. And because I feel like that's where you find growth sometimes, And so many people are not that way. And it's just that I find it very boring. So.
Well, and that's me mentally. Like, that's been the last, like, 3 years probably. I've been, like, listening to all these podcasts of people I completely disagree with and just bending my mind over all this stuff, right? Like, and just trying to wrap my mind around all this stuff. Same thing with the books I'm reading, like just a variety of different, points of view on things. And it's like, and I love it because I'm just like, people will say something and I'm like, hey, no, you don't understand these people at all. And then I'll explain to them, like the total flip side of what they're talking about, right? And it's like, they may or may not believe me, but so I think you said that you're a 4 wing 5, and so you want everything to be perfect before you move forward?
Well, this podcast is a perfect example of that. I don't know if I want it to be perfect, but I tend to think about it way too much. Like, I investigated audio supplies, and it's still not perfect, but I can just I can really hyper focus on a thing. So
I'm thinking that for me as a 4 wing 3, this is the way I stated, I want to get something unique out there as soon as possible because the world needs it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that.
So it's a bit different, I think. Because I just feel like, and it's our tagline now for the Wax Museum is like conversations that need to be had. And I feel like there's just things that need to be said. And that's what I'm on right now. I've got this compulsion to get ideas out there.
I like that. No, and you've been very good to me as we've chatted, and you just kind of said like, well, that's good. Let's go with it. And it was just kind of a nudge. I don't even know if you realized you're doing it, but I wanted to stay there like, no, that's a good intro. Now let's try something else. I'm like, okay. So, all right, you want to record one? Let's put it on this book and let's record it. I'm like, okay. And I think in my professional life, from like I've had the same job since I was 18, so I'm coming on like 19 years as a self-employed photographer. Wow. And a lot of that, and we've had a successful business, but a lot of that was driven by me really kind of being motivated by a lot of fear at times, which is, and some of that's healthy, like, you got to pay the house payment, so get to work. But with the podcast, it was kind of like a creative outlet. It wasn't about money or trying to make a living. And so, I wanted I tended to really listen to the voices in my head of, well, it's probably already been done and you're not going to do a very good job at it and all these kind of. And the other day I was reading a blog, a guy I really like, Neil Carter. Gosh, I'll have to put a link in notes, but he's his blog is Godless in Dixie, and he's an atheist. He's a math teacher. He writes some great articles. No matter if you're atheist or not, he just writes stuff like he'll talk about how Paul really invented Christianity and how.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's Paulianity, and Paul doesn't refer to a lot of to Jesus' miracles or the virgin birth, or there's all these things that he never talks about. But anyway, as I was reading the article, I was like, I've heard a lot of these bullet points before, but I like the way he's saying them. And I thought, I'm sure whenever he sat down to write this, he could have said, oh, there's plenty of scholars that have already talked about this and they've explained it much better. But no, Neil said, I'm going to do it in my voice. Yeah. And the way I see it. And I was like, that must be the secret.
Yeah.
Because so many things have already been done, but it hasn't been done with your voice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, music is another one, right? It's like, how do you create something unique? And I don't know. I need to do an air smudge pitch here. But I really believe that a lot of art has been ruined by people trying to figure out how to make it profitable. And a lot of times what happens is you've got a author who wants to publish their book, so they spend like $2,000 publishing their book. And then when they go to sell it, they're like, oh man, I got to get my family and friends to buy this. And it's just like, and everybody hates that person, right? And I mean, same thing with the musician. They spend all this money, going into the studio and recording, and then they got to get it dispersed and all this stuff. And same thing with podcasting. Like, it's like, please, pay. What is it like? Patreon. Please join my Patreon and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, you know what? I'm so busy creating my own stuff. I don't want to pay for other people's stuff. But I know what I can do is I can help people start their own initiatives. And so I started Air Smudge Collaborative for that reason. And the idea behind it, the reason why we call it Smudge, is because when I did we did the art for Bridge of Watt, my debut single, which is on Apple Music. I could not have this sticker that was stuck on my chest to cover up my Adidas logo, right? It was a sticker that said 5 cents on it that my son put on it that we were like, okay, cool, that circumvents that. But then, when I submitted it to this app, which actually put my music up there for free, so basically I paid no money to make this music, what I did is I got sick of waiting for my son to fix it because I needed the 5 cents to disappear from it, and I went into Photoshop and I just smudged it. And if you look at the album cover, you can see that there's just this yellow smudge on my chest, and it kind of looks like it's supposed to be there. And I thought, a lot of the great art is a smudge. And so it's like somebody was playing guitar and they played a chord wrong, or, maybe I put a phrase in one of my songs that I'm like, well, that's I don't even know what that means, but I like how it sounds. It's like that's what we're looking for with art. And I think we have a better chance of getting smudges when we're creating something for free rather than trying to go for profit.
Oh, amen. I do not like the profit motive. And we were talking about that recently with friends that were involved in business, and or not even friends, but people that you come across and you think you've made a new friend and you have a relationship with this person, and then you realize that it's just a profit motive.
Oh,
it's hard. It's hard not to take that. It's hard not to take that to heart.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of the Enneagram 4 thing. We demand authenticity, and
Yes.
I don't know if all Enneagram 4 people are highly sensitive, or if highly sensitive people are Enneagram 4s. But I do think that if you demand authenticity from others and you demand it from yourself, and you want to live an authentic life, you're making a choice, and with that choice comes the ability to be heard.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Okay, if we go back to the numbers, the number 8 is a challenger,
right?
And they are very intense as well. I love a good healthy 8, but an unhealthy 8, it's not good. An unhealthy 8, they do not consider other people's feelings, and they into just kind of steamroll them with their vision.
Yes.
But anyway, if you want to live an authentic life, which art is usually the person putting themselves on paper, then you kind of open yourselves up, and that profit motive kind of gets in the way.
And what I think is crazy is that I have this notion that truly authentic art will make money at some point. And so I really believe that if I help enough artists, launch their projects, eventually someone will start making money at what they're doing. And when they start making money, I'll say, hey, would you consider like putting, I don't know, 10% of whatever you earn back into the pot so that Air Smudge can do more? And my theory is if we're really good at what we're doing, we'll actually be able to do this full time.
Well, it's definitely possible, because like part of my success in our photography business has been me, like whenever I don't know what to do, I just look for an opportunity to try to help someone else.
Yeah. Yep.
And I try to keep my eyes open. Like I try to treat other vendors the way I would want to be treated.
Yep. Exactly.
And I do think it works out in the wash. It doesn't always feel like it, but it does.
Yeah.
And it also gives you meaning.
Yes, and meaning is everything to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend my time doing something meaningless. And so if it is something that seems meaningless, I'm going to find a way to bring it meaning.
Yes. Amen.
So if I'm sitting there doing data entry, I am going to listen to the most deep philosophical podcast while I'm doing this mindless data entry. Same thing with driving.
Okay, well yeah. You have to find the meaning. It's the why. It's not the what, it's the why.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like, I don't know, it's funny too, because it's become more about me becoming a more well-rounded person, not so much like that, I need to somehow get something out of this or become a bigger deal through this. The more I've let go of trying to become a big deal, the more attention I've gotten. And it's crazy. just noticing, like, the people that are starting to notice me now. I'm like, huh, funny, I used to care about that, and I don't care anymore. And now I'm getting noticed? Like, how does that work? It's like the more you let go of it, the more you get.
Oh, amen. Yeah, yeah. I started following a guy named Nate. It's hard to say his last name, but his handle on Instagram is The Other Side of Saved. And he experienced some trauma growing up. I believe it was sexual abuse. But I say that because, or I'm pretty sure, because he is very raw on his Instagram. And he shares photos of like himself as a child with quotes like, you didn't know what you didn't know what you'd have to overcome, but you will. And it's just very powerful stuff. It's so powerful that the first time I saw it, I kind of looked away. It wasn't anything bad in terms of imagery, but it was just so vulnerable, the words that he was using. And so anyway, I was messaging him, and I was like, and I told him that. I said, at first, when I was looking at your page, I was kind of taken aback, and I said, but I really appreciate it. And he said, that's the power of authenticity, is that people may not be able to relate because, for instance, I have not had that type of abuse.
Right.
But he says that, but they are attracted to authenticity.
Yeah.
And it's also become so very rare in our culture. The idea of authenticity, like it's definitely not the way to make money. Often.
Well, and I mean, it's like, I think, I want to be unique. I don't want to be just like everyone else. And I think there was a point in my life where I felt like, man, I don't fit in. How do I fit in? And I tried to figure it out. And then I got to a point where I realized, well, the point is to not fit in. Like, that's who I am. I don't fit. I'm a little off, and that's okay. It's kind of what gives me my flavor. And so once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I can rock this. And I think I figured it out, like when I was like 38, And so it's like being comfortable in my own skin. Authenticity. But
I still feel like I'm learning that.
I was trying to think of what I was. Oh, I know. Okay, so when you were talking about your friend there, I feel like I can either have a deep pool for my own emotions and just dig myself a pit and sit in self-pity, or I can use the same pit to start to delve into other people's issues. And I feel like this deep capacity for emotion is meant to be used in community, because if I use it by myself, I'm just gonna sit and feel bad for myself.
Yeah. No, that's navel gazing.
Yeah,
right?
I'm trying to say it in the healthiest way, because I'm like, it's not that I'm not dealing with my own stuff, but it's almost like I need a 50-50 balance here. Because if it's 100% my sadness that I'm carrying, that's dumb. It's a waste of time. But if I could somehow kind of couple it with someone else's suffering, then it's like, oh, okay, this is good.
Well, I think people give you perspective. And so it's not that your suffering is not real. Yeah. And it's not that you should feel shame, which is a whole other podcast about it. It's like, well, why are you beating yourself up, John? You could be X, Y, Z. It's like, no, this is a real emotion, a real feeling. I'm going to feel it. But people do give you perspective when you're in community or in that, we've had people over to the house, and I've kind of been in a funk, and I knew I needed to have some time with other adults. And we're all hanging out, and I catch myself thinking, oh, my feelings are kind of, I feel good, I'm happy, and all this dread I was feeling is kind of alleviated because I sense that it's not as bad as I thought it was. 2 hours.
Yeah. I know, moment to moment. I know what you're saying. It's like, I'm dying, and the next minute it's like, I really wasn't dying. I don't know what that was. But and I think I was listening, there's a band, I can't remember what band it was, but they have a song, and it's like, it's only a chemical. And I don't know if they were actually writing about depression, but I was like, oh man, that's it. When I hit like that 3 o'clock lull where I'm just like all of a sudden feeling depressed, it's like, oh yeah, this is a chemical thing. It'll pass.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's part of it too. So I think, the coping with the deep feelings is to actually, not just carry your own load all the time and learn to carry other people's loads. But I think the other thing too is starting to note when there's patterns and say, oh, this is just the chemical kicking in. I've found even, if I start doing something obsessively, like I can't really binge Netflix or binge play video games. I limit myself to 2. It's a rule. I limit myself to 2. And then I take a break and do something else, because otherwise I'm going to start feeling depressed. And I don't know what it is, but I just need that rhythm in my life.
Well, you have to come back from it, and you have to get a different view. It's like I try not to go grocery shopping when I'm hungry. I try not to make death decisions before I go to bed because I'm tired. So I need to step away, give it fresh eyes. And I need that perspective. It's so easy to lose that perspective because in the moment you're thinking, but I'm feeling it, and that must be right, So
no, you're right, and I think that's with art too, right? Like it's like you create something, and it's like I'm gonna have to come back to this tomorrow to see if it actually is as good as I thought it was.
Yeah. So there's so much to be said here. I'm telling you, I think I could just make the entire podcast about Enneagram 4 survival guides. Because like I've even messaged Ian Morgan Cron because and I've told him I wish you would help me. I wish you would give tips for Enneagram 4s because I've heard him say things like waking up in a bad headspace, but he never gives tips about how to get out of it. It's just kind of like, I woke up the other day in a really bad headspace. But next week, so I'm just like, I need tips, I need strategies, and that was kind of my idea behind a philosophy of hope. I didn't want to make it too specific, so I don't know about that. But so I have to ask you before we get off, which is something I kind of want to ask all my guests. What is your philosophy of hope? What practices do you have in your life that give you hope? I know we've kind of hit on some of those things, but I just like to know what hope means to other people. And I know that's a lot to unpack, and I don't want it to be too big of a question, but simply, for some people it might be I go to the gym every day at 6 a.m. I do not compromise that. I'm talking to another guy that is a big proponent of centering prayer, which I think is kind of fascinating, especially having the ADD mind. But there's practices that people put into place that are part of their life or beliefs that they really hold on to that help them get through a bad day.
Sorry.
No. The older I get, the more importance I see on these. The more importance I see of these practices.
I think, as I said, that Sabbath is so important to me, and just that disconnecting from that core doing and finding that balance between doing and being. Like I think that good mental health requires the optimal balance between being and doing. And so for me, it means every Sunday I'm not getting my unique stuff out there as soon as possible because the world needs it. I just love saying that because it's so tongue-in-cheek, but I really believe that sometimes, that the world needs to hear what I'm saying right now. Another thing, I'm not trying to figure out how to put this into words, but it's kind of like, I remember one time I was on a trip, and I was just on a trip. It sounds like I'm on drugs. No, I was driving, and I was on like satellite radio, and I was like, God, show me where you are on every one of these channels. And I just kept flipping channels, and I just kept looking for God on every one of them. And I saw him on every one of those channels. And I'm realizing that there's like a headspace I can get into where I'm just in the zone and I can sense God in everything. And I don't know if that's really, if you can call that a spiritual practice. It's like a focusing. I don't know if that's kind of what centering prayer would be, but it's like I'm just sensing Him or the presence. Like the gender. But it's just sensing the presence of God in the midst of everything.
Would that, I don't, yeah. Well, would that just be the wonder of the moment? Or would that be the perspective of the moment? Or would it be more specific than that? You know, for instance, if I'm pushing my kids on the swing outside, sometimes I'll have my phone in my hand. I'm worried about work. I feel compelled to push them because I'm their dad, and But then, the phone battery dies. I put it in my pocket. I sit back. I take a deep breath, and I say, "This is what it's all about." And Kevin, you have to always come back to zero. Always come back to the nothingness, but at the same time, the everything,
Yeah, because I don't think it has to be nothingness. Like, I don't think it has to be like a certain doing in that. Like, I could be right in the heat of like giving someone CPR.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, God, I want to see you in this right now. And it's like, oh yeah, there you are. And it's just like, it's just this deep knowing. And it's like almost like He is the white noise in behind all of this. And it's like He can reveal Himself whenever you just ask Him. It's like, where are you in this? And it's like, oh, I'm right here. Or I'm in that smile of that person you just walked by, right? It's like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I feel like it's possible to get at that wavelength. And it's like, and you could be in the midst of anything and still have that deep knowing.
For people that might be listening that are triggered by the word God, okay, because I can hear it in my brain, like, oh, you find divine. God in that? Well, yeah, you find God, whenever He drowns millions of people. So so is there another way that you can think of that, or people might find helpful that maybe it's not so broad, or is that kind of a non-negotiable? Or because I understand coming from the world.
I've realized that we get so hung up on language, and it's a sense of a presence, a sense of love, a sense of hope, right? And when you mention Noah and you mention that situation, it's like it's hard for me to find that same presence in that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really thinking in that term, right? Like I get where that would be triggering for people, right? But it's like, it's home. It's like this sense of home, this sense of hope, this sense of love, this unconditional love that's still with me. And it's like, how is that still with me? Like, after all that's happened, after some of the silly things I've done, it's like, you're still here? Like, right? And it's just, and it isn't a shameful thing. And it isn't something either that I'm like, well, I earned this after many, many, many hours of meditation. I've now reached this point. It was just simply like an invitation. And I'm like, all right, I want to see you right here. And it's like, boom, that presence is right here.
Yeah. It's easy to lose that too, the present moment.
Yeah. And I think we have a sense that the present moment has to be a certain thing before it becomes spiritual. And I'm like, no, I think every moment can be spiritual. You just need to get in the right frame of mind to accept it.
One thing I love about North Carolina is that we have, I live like 10 minutes from the ocean, but then I can drive 5 hours and I'm in the mountains.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things to do is to go hiking. And I just love getting on a trail. I love it because I'm moving, exerting energy.
Mm.
I'm the end goal in mind. I can enjoy getting there. I know I'm going somewhere, and then you have a sense of wonder when you usually get to the end of the trail. So it's just like the perfect situation for me. But it's also anytime I've kind of lost myself, uh, or I need that reminder. I'm like, I've got to get to the mountains, and I went to the mountains probably 4 times this year, which is kind of a lot for me.
Yeah.
So every time I go, I'm telling you, I come back. I don't know if it's a 5 hour drive. I don't know if it's the hiking, but you come back refreshed. You come back with a different perspective, and it probably helps that you can't get cell signal up there also.
Yeah. No, that's a nice thing to get away from. I'm formulating something in my brain right now, and I'm not sure how to word this exactly, but it's almost a like a divine that is cages you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that really is what bothers me about institutions of religion right now is I feel like they are caging all of this when it's really something that needs to be allowed to run a little more wild.
Uh-huh.
And I think
Well,
that's what I'm pursuing right now. Like we're coming up on the Christmas season where people are just like talking about like, tradition and all this stuff. And I'm like, I think this season should be about something new. And, like they were talking about like the coming of Christ and how, it was like not in ways people expected. They expected Donald Trump to come,
yeah,
but
yeah.
instead it was like this humble carpenter teacher, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I am ready to receive something new here. And I
Mm-hmm.
want that to be what the Christmas season is about. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want to do any of the traditions. I mean, we do have a tree up and all that, right? But I'm just like, I just want to come in with a fresh frame of mind and be willing to accept all of this in a whole new way because I don't want, this presence to be caged by my own expectations. I want it to
Mm-hmm.
run wild and I want to delve into this mystery, delve into this wonder because that's what this pursuit is about.
Yeah, yeah. The invigoration, yeah, of it all. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with. I love it. I know. You. Not only are you probably a little addicted to your suffering, but you're probably also a little addicted to to being uncomfortable because it brings you to
Yeah.
life. And
Yes.
that, yeah, and that's how I feel. Like I like being uncomfortable. Like I like flipping the proverbial tables in my life. Like,
Yes.
oh, you think that's what you do? Okay, because I feel like I'm alive. You know, I
Yes.
feel like I'm thinking, I'm feeling, I'm moving, I'm having to grapple with it. It's not like this. Like, well, I know that's the truth, so let's pack that away and put it in the attic.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. And I feel sad for people who have done that with everything. I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Like how are you even alive right now?" Like
Yeah, I know. It's just, anyway. Okay, well, we've got so much more to talk about, so we're gonna have to make this uh a few more episodes of the Enneagram 4 survival guide, because I guarantee you there's an Enneagram 4 out there that's going to hear one of these episodes and say thank you, thank you, thank you. I thought I was alone because when I came to the Enneagram, I thought I was alone, and
yeah.
the one that I didn't like about it when my wife, and I didn't even read the book. My wife says, "Hey, does this resonate with you?" I'm like, "Does what resonate with me?" And she reads this paragraph out of a Richard Rohr book called "The Enneagram: A Christian's Perspective."
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, someone just read my mail.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
I just didn't like it because you feel like someone found you out.
Yeah.
But I think it can bring you validation and give you something to work with in transforming yourself, transforming your relationship. But anyway, thank you for being with me on the first episode, and thank you for your encouragement, John.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Well, I'll have you back soon, and we'll do it again on A Philosophy of Hope.
Air Smudge.